I like to begin today's speech with a quote by saying, adoption is like a roller coaster. It has its ups and downs, but it's your choice to scream or enjoy the ride. So by that quote, you can obviously tell today's speech will be about adoption, and I will be going through the adoption process, the cost of adoption, and fostering to adopt versus adopting privately. Some of the sources I'm using today are from Adoption Network, US Kids Adopt, and A Child's Dream. These are websites that help you through the adoption process and provide information to help families looking to grow. Some facts for you before we dive into the process. There's currently 400,000 children waiting to be adopted within the US, and over 100,000 of those children are in state agencies waiting to be adopted. So there's definitely a lot of kids who are in need of a loving family and home. Also, about 1 in 10 couples struggle with infertility and will have to seek a different means to growing their family versus through having their own child. So some of the things you'll have to do in order to get the adoption process started is a home study. The home study is going to be needed whether you foster to adopt or if you adopt through a private organization. It takes about 90 days to get the home study completed, get your paperwork back, and either your state or a private agency is going to need that, so you'll want to get that done first. The next thing you'll want to do is decide, do you want to go with a private adoption or adopt through fostering? Once you decide, you'll then want to take the next steps. Reach out to an agency to get the ball rolling with them and complete their application process. And these application processes can be pretty lengthy. They want a lot of information from you. They want your social, they want your pay stubs, they want your tax returns for the past 3 years, they want to know if you're in the military and have those discharge papers, they want your marriage license, they want your medical records, they want proof of information that you're going to provide medical insurance care for that child. So a lot of information. You also have to do a Dear Birth Parent letter, and that's just reaching out to any birth parent that might choose you to adopt their child. So a lot of information and stuff you've got to include to get that ball rolling. The next option you have is to foster to adopt. And when you foster to adopt, you're going to have to reach out to your state. And they are going to have training classes, they're going to require that home study, background checks, and just meetings with you in order to become a foster parent. After you become a foster parent, you then will go through the process of having children that you will have to foster. And a lot of times these children aren't even really available to adopt, so it will be a waiting game for you. You'll also have pre-adoption meetings. So this is when you're meeting with the baby or with the birth parents or with the child you'll be adopting through foster care, and just having like that one-on-one contact to kind of get to know one another. You'll also have post-adoption meetings, which is when you've already adopted the baby or the child and their supervised visits, they're coming in to make sure that you're taking care of this child and everything's going according to plan. And then there's the finalization of adoption, which is everything's legal, it's set in stone, baby is yours, child is yours, family's happy, and you got to grow the family the way you want it to. Some of the costs that are incurred when you're looking at adoption can get pretty high, especially if you look at a private adoption. Those can range from $15,000 to $30,000 just in the agency fee. That's just the agency fee. Birth expenses for that birth parent, that could include lodging, medical expenses, living expenses for them to eat and feed themselves, and that can cost upwards of $50,000 total. And that's with the agency fee in there and the birth parent expenses and any expenses you will accrue while doing a private adoption. It's a pretty big ticket number, especially considering the cost it is just to have a newborn baby. When you go into foster care though, it's typically not expensive. You won't accrue any expenses unless you're doing an out-of-state adoption through foster care, because then you have to cover yourself for travel expenses and lodging and getting yourself there to meet with that child. They will not reimburse you for that. There's also, if you choose to get a lawyer while doing the fostering process, you will have to take care of your own legal expenses. They won't reimburse you for that. So the foster care adoption can typically get up to $2,000 in cost, which is pennies compared to that $50,000 number we heard with the private adoption. So that's a thing you'll have to weigh when you're deciding what type of adoption you want to do. So my last topic I'd like to discuss with you is the difference between and how to choose fostering to adopt and adoption. So you really just have to look at, how do I want to grow my family? Well, some of the pros with fostering to adopt is it's actually not as lengthy as a time to have a child in your home that you can care for and give all that love you've saved up, because you'll have a child placed with you rather soon. It takes about 6 months to get that foster parent process complete. So that's a good thing. The cons though, and another pro, is the cost. You're not going to incur this heavy financial cost to have this baby or child in your home. Some of the cons though are, if you were looking for a baby, it's extremely hard to find a newborn baby in the foster system, because most parents are given up to 6 months to kind of get things together and start caring for their child within state requirements. And then another con is the fact that, these children will most likely be older and they're victims of abuse. They've gone through harsh living circumstances, so you are going to have to take on that responsibility. So the next one is obviously private adoption. Some of the pros with that are you get to have a newborn baby. You pick out the birth parents pick you, and then you say yes, and you get to be there when baby's born and have that whole excitement experience if that was what you were looking for. And you're not going to have to, deal with a child who's been abused if you're not there for that, because some people, that is a lot to take on, to deal with. Some of the other cons is, you have a lower chance of losing that child, because when you foster to adopt, they can be placed back with biological family, because that's the state's ultimate goal, is to have biological family taking care of that child. So when you do a private adoption, you're going to have that baby. There's a lesser chance that something's going to go wrong and you won't have that child at the end of the day. But some of the cons are that cost. That cost weighs heavy, and you could wait 2 to 7 years to get a newborn baby. So let's say you start the process when you're 30 and you don't see a baby till you're 37. That can be daunting, or just flat out waiting that amount of time. So those are some of the pros and the cons to each type of adopting. But either way, every child deserves a forever home, to be loved and cared for, and every family deserves to have that happiness of that little bundle of joy, or just a child's laughter in their home. So today I'd like to end with a quote, and it says, "Anyone who doesn't have experience with adoption wonders, does love for a child come through DNA? I knew it didn't." And that quote was said by Katherine Heigl. Thank you guys.
Thank you.